Hello and welcome to Classic Book Reviews with David. You may know that I've set up a publishing company called Firestone Books. It's been up and running for a few years now. And the first book that I put together for Firestone Books was a collection, in fact 2 volumes of tales, early science fiction tales. And when I say early, I really do mean early. Here are the books. Early Science Fiction Tales Volume 1 and Volume 2. The first volume, I'll have to check because I can't remember off the top of my head, covers early science fiction from 51 BC to 1638. So we're going back really far in time. Now originally I thought that early science fiction would be, probably only going back to the 19th century with the likes of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. But when I did research and tried to put together 2 volumes of the earliest science fiction tales, I discovered that, as you can tell, they went back much further. And the earliest story I could find was The Dream of Scipio by Cicero. It's a very interesting story. It's very short as well, about a man who goes into space and he looks around and he sees how insignificant the Earth is. I won't go through every single story in both volumes because that would take ages. I'll just go through a few stories. There was also the next early science fiction tale was True History by someone called Lucian of Samosata. And his story is very interesting in that he is on a ship and he and his crew get whisked up in a water spout or something like that, and they get dumped on the moon where they meet a variety of exotic creatures. And it's probably the first work ever written that includes alien creatures, creatures from another world, and they lived on the moon. And it's a very comical story and a very enjoyable one. One interesting thing, there are many interesting things, but one of the interesting things is how suddenly you get these early science fiction stories written 2,000 years ago and they come to an abrupt halt. And there's a gap of about 1,500 years until the 1600s before European writers seem to start writing science fiction once more. There are a number of reasons for this. Well, it's mainly to do with the collapse of the Greek and Roman empires and in the Dark Ages, which followed, as they're sometimes known as. Some people don't like the term Dark Ages, but I'll have to use it because I'm not sure of any other terms. There was very little in the way of written works. And also, when you start talking about life on other planets and things like that, you could, get into trouble with the church of the time because it didn't follow Christian doctrine. Interestingly, that doesn't mean that science fiction came to an end, because in the Far East, stories were still being written. For instance, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, which is an old Japanese story about a girl who comes from the moon to the Earth. It's a lovely little story, very, very short, but a very, very nice story. As I say, it's only in the 1500s or thereabouts, the 1600s, that science fiction starts to re-emerge. And it coincides with a number of things that are going on at the time. There's the decline of the Catholic Church, the rise of Protestantism. There's the printing press, which may have had an effect. Odd little things like the circumnavigation of the Earth. So in the olden days, a long, long time ago, people would have written about people going to mysterious islands and having adventures there. But once they discovered the Earth was round and all the islands started being mapped and the like, I think science fiction writers started to look up to the heavens and even down into the middle of the Earth for new stories, new adventures, and new places to go. But above all, the main influence on this new generation of early science fiction was the rise of science itself as we know it, around the late 1500s, 1600s. And so you get things like The Man in the Moon, which is an interesting tale. It's about a man who gets a flock of geese and tethers them to his craft of some sort, and they pull him up into the air and all the way to the moon, which is, of course, very fanciful, but back then, you had to think of ingenious ways of getting a man to the moon. And it's a very interesting tale. It was actually written by a bishop. And there are aliens on the moon, and the aliens are Christian aliens. So it's a very interesting tale. And that's it, really. In the next video, I'll discuss the second volume, which goes from the 1600s to the 1800s, where there are stories of parallel dimensions and more aliens visiting Earth and the like. And that's it. Thanks for watching. You can always follow on Facebook and Twitter below, and you can always subscribe. See you later.